Jimmy Webb is a Grammy Award-winning songwriter and former Inland Empire resident. He should be familiar to regular viewers of Tales from the IE. Webb graduated from Colton High School in 1964. He played trumpet in the Yellow Jacket Marching Band. He then attended San Bernardino Valley College, taking music classes before relocating to Los Angeles to begin his songwriting career. On July 12, 2023, Webb took a retrospective look back at his most famous compositions at the Coach House Concert Theater in San Juan Capistrano, California. It was just Jimmy Webb, a grand piano, and 12 of his treasure trove of timeless tunes. His appreciative audience sold out the venue. Webb began the concert by performing Highwayman. It was originally recorded in 1985 by country music supergroup The Highwaymen, who named themselves after the song title. The group was made up of Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, and Chris Christopherson. Their recording went to #1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart and earned Jimmy Webb a Grammy Award for the Best Country Song of 1985. The second song performed was Galveston. Webb said it was his take on Vietnam War soldiers yearning to finish their tour of duty and returning home safely to their loved ones. Webb said, "I was not a big fan of the war in Vietnam, but I surely do appreciate the lads who went over and did kind of an ugly job that nobody else wanted to do. And this is a song that I wrote for them. I've spoken to many of them since, and they've told me that they heard me loud and clear. And that means a hell of a lot." When Webb auditioned the song for Glenn Campbell, he played it in what he called an elegiac tempo and a little tear in my voice. The March 1969 release by Glenn Campbell went to #1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart and #4 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. But some of the lyrics were changed, and Campbell sang it at a faster tempo that Webb felt downplayed the serious aspects of the song. Webb told the audience, "I'm not complaining. I never sent any checks back, ladies and gentlemen. As long as the check came in, it was a great record. If I had any disappointments, I kept them to myself." The third number Webb performed was his breakthrough composition, Up, Up, and Away. It was first recorded by the Fifth Dimension and released in April 1967. By June, it had reached #7 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. The song won 8 Grammys for the group and Jimmy Webb, including Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best Performance by a Vocal Group, Best Contemporary Group Performance, and Best Contemporary Single. Webb said, "The thing that kicked it all off for me was a guy named Johnny Rivers, who owned a record company called Soul City." Rivers put Webb to work with the Versatiles, who later became the Fifth Dimension. Webb said, "Johnny Rivers left me in charge of these 5 wonderful talents." Webb continued, "And I just started slipping my songs into the pile. I taught them all a bunch of Jimmy Webb songs. The only one that really hung in there for me was Up, Up, and Away. The song had its origin in the Inland Empire." In January 1967, San Bernardino radio station KMEN hyped its latest promotion, a hot air balloon with the Cayman logo prominently displayed. They called it the Prophet's Magnificent Flying Machine. The Prophet was Cayman disc jockey William F. Williams. The first flight launched on January 21, 1967, from the parking lot of Harry's Roller Rink, located on South E Street in San Bernardino. Entertainment was provided by Colton band the Northside Moss. During one balloon flight, Cayman disc jockey Williams told Jimmy Webb about his plans to write a screenplay about young people hot air ballooning. It was to be similar in style to the Beach Party movies, but he needed a theme song for the project. Webb took up the challenge and went to the San Bernardino Valley College music room and composed the song in less than an hour and a half. The movie was never made, so Up, Up, and Away became a part of Webb's compositions portfolio until it was offered to the Fifth Dimension. The fourth song played at the Coach House was Didn't We? The tune was recorded by actor-singer James Darren and released in June 1967. But the single failed to chart nationally. Webb was credited by his full name, Jimmy Lane Webb. In May 1968, Didn't We appeared on the B-side of MacArthur Park as performed by Irish actor-singer Richard Harris. In June 1969, it was re-released as the A-side of a single. It reached number 63 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Frank Sinatra was one of Jimmy Webb's musical heroes. Sinatra asked Webb if he had any songs for him. Frank Sinatra was such an imposing presence that even to this day, Webb can't call him Frank, only Mr. Sinatra. Webb said of Sinatra, "He was very kind to me and invited me over time after time to play songs. Those visits paid off as Old Blue Eyes recorded a version of Didn't We for his 1969 album, My Way." Sinatra's LP featured songs by other young songwriters, so Sinatra put Webb in the company of such elite artists as Ray Charles, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Paul Simon, and Stevie Wonder. Barbra Streisand performed Didn't We on her 1972 album Live Concert at the Forum. Released as a single in December 1972, it reached number 82 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. The fifth song performed was Do What You Gotta Do, a composition that Webb wrote when he was only 16 years old. In November 1967, it was released as a single by fellow Inland Empire resident Al Wilson. The recording reached number 39 on the Billboard R&B Top 100 chart. In 1968, it was recorded by both Bobby Vee and Nina Simone. Bobby's single was released in August and Nina's in October. Both reached number 83 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Nina Simone's 1968 recording of Do What You Gotta Do was heavily sampled in Kanye West's 2016 release, Famous. The song referenced a 2009 incident when West interrupted Taylor Swift's acceptance speech at an MTV Video Music Awards ceremony. About the song, Webb said, "Apart from the fact that Kanye West is saying some pretty repugnant things about Taylor Swift, this was basically my song with a lot of rapping over the top. I have to tell you, I was quite upset." It turns out that West had not asked for permission to sample the song. Webb's publisher eventually negotiated a settlement with West, whereby 45% of the song's publishing rights would go to Webb. As for the Taylor Swift lyrical controversy, Webb, probably realizing that there was little he could do about it, said, "Well, Taylor's a big girl now. She could probably take care of herself, and I took the money." The sixth song performed was The Worst That Could Happen. The Worst That Could Happen was first recorded by the Fifth Dimension as part of their late 1967 LP, The Magic Garden. The LP was an epic concept album documenting the beginning and the end of a love affair. Webb arranged and conducted the recording. He also composed all but one of the 12 songs. The story told on the album was inspired by the on-again, off-again relationship between Webb and his Colton High girlfriend, Susie Horton. Much of Webb's early work was directly inspired by Horton, but more on that later. The album's chart performance was considered disappointing because it only reached number 105 in the Billboard Top Pop Album chart. A little over a year later, The Worst That Could Happen was given new life when it was covered by New York vocal group The Brooklyn Bridge. It was released in December 1968, rising to the number 3 position on Billboard's Hot 100 chart in February 1969. After the success of the Brooklyn Bridge's version, Soul City Records reissued the Fifth Dimension's Magic Garden as The Worst That Could Happen, attempting to cash in on the tune's second chance popularity. The 7th song performed was The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. As a youth, Jimmy Webb was an avid reader of science fiction novels. One book was Robert A. Heinlein's 1966 book, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Webb wanted to use the book title for one of his compositions. He tried contacting the author to get permission. Through his attorney, Heinlein told Webb that he had no objections to its use. UK singer Joe Cocker was the first to record the song. It appeared on his 1974 album, I Can Stand a Little Rain. Judy Collins also recorded the song, and it appeared on her 1975 album, Judith. Before he sang the tune at the Coach House, Webb called Collins the godmother of lost and forlorn songs because she has a knack for taking material that's been overlooked and recreating it in her own special way. The song was also featured on Linda Ronstadt's 1982 LP, Get Closer, and on Joan Baez's 1987 album, Recently. Like Webb, Baez was also a former Inland Empire resident. In the 1950s, she lived in Redlands, while her father was a professor at the University of Redlands. The 8th song that Webb played was All I Know. The composition was at the bottom of a pile of tunes that Webb intended to present to Art Garfunkel. The singer was looking for his first solo single to record after the breakup of Simon and Garfunkel. Webb hesitated to offer it to Garfunkel because, as he explained, it was about a girl who was the biggest liar that I ever met in my life. The girl in question was Miss World 1961, Rosemary Franklin, who Webb was briefly involved with. In 1964, she had a bit part as a showgirl in the Beatles movie A Hard Day's Night. Webb remembered Art Garfunkel looking at his producer, Roy Halley, and saying, I think we can make a hit out of that, don't you, Roy? The recording was released in August of 1973. By November, it was a smash hit, reaching the number 9 position on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. It was number 1 on the Billboard Adult Contemporary chart and stayed there for 4 weeks. The record was to become Garfunkel's highest charting solo single. For the 9th song of his set, Webb performed By the Time I Get to Phoenix. This was another song with a Frank Sinatra connection. Frank Sinatra recorded it for his 1968 album Cycles. Jimmy Webb said that Sinatra once told him, You know, kiddo, you write a great saloon song. By the Time I Get to Phoenix is the greatest saloon song ever written. But the first singer to record By the Time I Get to Phoenix was Johnny Rivers. It appeared on his 1966 album Changes. Rivers was the one who pitched the song to Glenn Campbell. Since the publishing rights to the song belonged to Johnny Rivers' music, it was in his best interest to have established artists record the tune. Glenn Campbell liked the song, recorded and released it in late 1967. By December 1967, it reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot Country chart and number 26 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Isaac Hayes also recorded the song and released it on his 1969 LP, Hot Buttered Soul. When issued on CD, the album contained both the 18-minute 42-second LP version and the 6-minute 57-second single edit. The single, released in August 1969, reached number 37 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Some speculate that it might have been a bigger hit if the almost 7-minute-long single edit released to radio stations had been shorter. The 10th song performed by Jimmy Webb was one of his signature compositions, Wichita Lineman. After recording By the Time I Get to Phoenix, Glenn Campbell asked Jimmy Webb if he had any other town or location songs. Webb quickly composed Wichita Lineman. He sent Campbell an incomplete demo telling him, "I don't think this song is finished, but I'm going to send it to you." Before Webb could finish the song, it was already recorded and released. By December 1968, it reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot Country and number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. In December 1969, Sergio Mendes and Brazil 66 released their rendition of the song. It reached number 95 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. In 2019, UK author Dylan Jones devoted an entire book to Wichita Lineman. He quoted Jimmy Webb as saying, "It's just another song to me. I've written 1,000 of them, and it's really just another one." Glenn Campbell said, "When I heard it, I cried. It made me cry because I was homesick. It's just a masterfully written song." In the book, legendary singer-songwriter Bob Dylan called By the Time I Get to Phoenix the greatest song ever written. The 11th song performed by Webb at the Coach House was McArthur Park. Despite its enduring popularity, it is perhaps his most polarizing song. It has been both lauded and ridiculed for its lyrical imagery. The line, "Someone left the cake out in the rain," seems to be the one that most upsets the tune's detractors. In defense of his lyrics, Webb said, "There's nothing in it that's fabricated. The old men playing checkers by the trees, the cake that was left out in the rain, all of the things that are talked about in the song are things that I actually saw." Webb was an admirer of 1960s group The Association and first offered the song to them. They listened politely but turned down a chance to record the tune. When actor-singer Richard Harris heard the song, he told Webb that he had to record it. Harris's recording won Webb a Grammy for Best Instrumental Arrangement, accompanying a vocalist. As noted on the single's picture sleeve, Jimmy Webb not only wrote the song, but he also arranged and produced it. Despite the fact that the 45 was almost 7.5 minutes long, it received enough radio airplay for it to reach the number 3 position on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in June 1968. 10 years later, a disco version of McArthur Park was recorded by Donna Summer. It rose to the number 1 position on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in November 1978. It is perhaps one of Jimmy Webb's most frequently covered songs. In his 2017 book, The Cake and the Rain, he compiled a partial list of over 135 artists that have recorded McArthur Park. For his encore, Jimmy Webb performed one of his lesser-known songs, No Signs of Age. It tells the story of 2 former lovers coming face to face after many years apart. It seemed an appropriate song for him to sing to his audience to close the evening. The opening lyrics to the song are, "It's been a long, long time since I've seen your face. I've got crow's feet and laugh lines to prove it. You've been a long time away, but here we are, almost touching again. How many years has it been? But you show no signs of age. No sign." Speaking of former lovers, as mentioned earlier, many of Jimmy Webb's early compositions were inspired by his on-again, off-again romance with his Colton High School girlfriend, Susie Horton. Both eventually moved on to other relationships, but they have remained friends over the years. Of the 12 numbers Webb performed at the Coach House, half were Susie songs. As Jimmy Webb concluded his concert, the appreciative Coach House audience gave him a standing ovation. Leaving the stage, Webb took the opportunity to say goodbye and thank them for attending his concert. The audience included a number of his Colton High School classmates who made the journey to attend his performance. It's been over half a century since Jimmy Webb was a resident of the Inland Empire. Today, he is an honored elder statesman of songwriters that began their careers in the 1960s.